Futures Radio Show, sponsored by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com.
Every day, traders and investors dive in to tackle the ever-changing markets to find opportunity. Futures Radio Show is your number one source for answers to the questions that all market participants want to ask. Veteran futures trader Anthony Crudele sits down with the most influential leaders and top traders in the industry. Now, here's your host, Anthony Crudele.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in for this episode with Edward Woodford. Remember, shows are posted on Monday and Thursday. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review on iTunes. Before I play today's interview for you, I want to give a shout out to the great sponsors of Futures Radio Show: CME Group, Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and Top Step Trader. To learn more about these sponsors and the important things they are doing for futures traders, be sure to click on their logos on our website. Today I spoke with co-founder and CEO of SeedCX, Edward Woodford. We chatted about SeedCX and how Chicago is becoming the hub for all things crypto. Edward explains how SeedCX is blending decentralized and centralized systems, where the liquidity and growth will come in digital asset trading, and what he believes the next evolution is in digital assets. Without further ado, let me take you right to the interview with Edward. So Edward, talk to us about your experience in markets, specifically digital asset space, and give us a little insight of what's going on with you guys at SeedCX.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Myself and my co-founder started Seed actually approaching 4 years now. And we found it out of some academic research that we had been conducting at MIT on emerging asset classes. And we felt like we had an opportunity, despite being relatively young in our careers, to have an impact, and kind of an impact on the fringes, commodities that were growing, but potentially hadn't been fully explored or fully developed, and kind of to get in on the ground floor. So we built up Seed. We're now approaching 50 people. We're based in Chicago. And our goal is to provide an institutional digital asset trading venue, as well as being able to provide the settlement for digital assets in both digital asset to digital asset, but also digital asset to fiat.
You mentioned Chicago is where you guys are located.
Mm-hmm.
More and more I hear about crypto companies opening up in Chicago. Why did you decide Chicago?
Well, it's obviously the weather, right? But no, seriously, it's a place where people just get traded. When we started the business, we obviously, you can tell from my accent, I don't have any roots here necessarily in the US, and so we actually traveled around, which is kind of being glorified vagabonds, trying to raise money for the business. And we went all over the United States. But when we came to Chicago, it was just people got it. We didn't really have to explain certain fundamental aspects. So it was that point. There's also obviously a huge amount of talent in the city for trading. But I think the biggest point is just that the way that capital flows in institutions exist here. So here there's a lot of proprietary trading versus, say, New York or San Francisco, where there's a lot more funds. And the mandate and the flexibility of these groups in Chicago, because it is proprietary money, to be able to do more innovative things and be on the ground floor earlier on without a ton of different risk committees and kind of different responsibilities that groups have to their LPs, it has allowed Chicago to be a very strong first mover in the digital asset space. So I think that's really the main driver is talent and understanding of trading, but most importantly, the way that capital exists in this city versus, say, for example, New York.
Who are some of your partners and investors in SeedCX?
Yeah, so our biggest investor is Bain Capital. which is obviously a very established VC and private equity firm, as well as OKX, which is one of the largest exchanges in the world. And they're invested in us, partly because of our focus on the institutional business, but also because of our regulatory licenses. And so I actually see those kind of two lead investors as kind of epitomizing what we're trying to do here at Seed, which is bringing old and new traders into the digital asset space. So groups that have maybe potentially been more reticent to engage, we're trying to bring them into the digital asset space by providing a unique service. We also have a number of local Chicago groups, including a couple of people who've actually been on your podcast before, including Colleen Sullivan from CMT Digital. They're an investor. Bluefire Capital, which is another local fund as well. So we really got a group of investors across the whole trading space, not only traders, but we also have, for example, mining pools that are investors, as well as more established kind of VC groups.
Yeah, I love Colleen. She's great. It sounds to me like you guys are very similar, or maybe even exactly the same, I don't know, I'll let you tell me, as ErisX.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some parallels, right? And this has been a space where there's been a lot of groups entering the space. And I suppose the main difference between us and ErisX is, right, we're live. We're now doing live trading in our spot market. But they share a similar vision to blend both spot market trading with derivatives trading. We have a swap execution facility that allows us to do swaps, i.e. forwards and options. They have a DCM, which allows them to do essentially cleared futures. I think the focus may be a little bit different. We're purely focused on institutions, and that really manifests itself in a number of ways that we've built our systems and the way that we've created market structure, for example. So we have minimum order sizes, we have larger tick sizes when compared to more retail platforms, which we think will create a greater liquidity at each price band and create less of a flickery market, because institutions don't necessarily want to be trading, at a Satoshi level. So there's certainly some parallels, but the key for us when we think about the competitive landscape is obviously capturing market share right now and being more innovative and progressive in the type of products that we do. Being a CEF versus a DCM gives us additional flexibility, but also the way that we think about this space. We have always come from a space of trying to undercut some of the perceived systems that exist in the financial space, right? And I think the interesting thing about digital assets is that it's filled with paradoxes. We're fundamentally talking about something that is decentralized, yet a lot of the conversation and a lot of the ways that the systems are built are centralized, right? So when you compare our wallet infrastructure, we give each and every one of our participants their own wallets. And then when trading occurs, it occurs off-chain. But then at the end of each trading session, the net movements occur on-chain. So there's actually on-chain settlement. So as an institution, you can look definitively at the blockchain and say, I actually own these assets, which is a huge issue right now for new groups trying to enter the space, is this proof of ownership. And so where we see ourselves differentiating ourselves from maybe more established financial players is this focus on trying to blend the decentralized world and the centralized world, and really bringing the best of both into the fore to be able to allow groups to enter the space.
You said you're going to be blending the space between the decentralized and centralized world. Dumb that down for us. Explain to us how that exactly is going to work.
Yeah, so obviously we spent many, many years with the construct of centralization, right? Trust in a third party. And then cryptocurrencies, digital assets really came to the fore after the financial crisis, where this concept of knowing exactly should you put all your trust into a third party, and that's really what was one of the drivers and success. So what I mean by this blended world is taking the best of a decentralized system and a centralized system. So a completely decentralized settlement system, in my view, doesn't make sense for high frequency central limit order book trading, where me and you could potentially trade thousands of times in a day, maybe even thousands of times in a minute. That is not possible with a completely decentralized system as it currently exists right now, because it takes time for the confirm of transactions to occur between us. So in Bitcoin, if you waited on one, it would take at least 10 minutes, which doesn't exactly make it safe available for quick central limit order book trading. I think there is an argument potentially for RFQ trades over time, but that's kind of getting off the track. So explaining what this centralized and decentralized blended solution that we've created means is, me and you could potentially trade all day, every day, on essentially off chain, and then at the end of the day, you owe me 50 Bitcoin. But we've traded thousands of times, but just the net position is 50 Bitcoin. At the end of the day, that 50 BTC is calculated, and there is an on-chain transaction from your wallet to my wallet. Compare that to the way that a lot of exchanges do this, which is completely off-chain. There is no movement on-chain. So you're essentially relying on the exchange to say there has been a movement of 50 BTC from you to me. But there's no way to truly validate whether that Bitcoin is actually, one, in your control, and secondly, actually exists, or there's sufficient Bitcoin to cover the total liabilities. And so this is why you've seen things like Tether and other cryptocurrencies lose a lot of value, because there's just this, a lot of it's done off-chain. And so what we're trying to do is bring the benefits of off-chain and on-chain to provide a workable solution for high-frequency trading, but with the benefits of a immutable, decentralized ledger of ownership.
Talk to us about the process that a new client has to go through to get on your exchange, and include some of the things like how much capital do they need? Can they only trade on your platform? Take us through that.
Yeah, so we can currently onboard you to multiple different regulatory or regulated bodies when you come onto Seed. But to the client, it's one onboarding process. And so you come online to our website, which is www.seedcx.com. You click on sign up. And then at that point, you can create an account. You provide the documents that we require. We go through the standard KYC AML. We also review financials to make sure that you meet certain financial obligations. And what we're looking for is institutional traders. And so to trade on our SEF, you need to be what is termed an eligible contract participant, which has a number of definitions, but most simply it's $10 million in assets. And so we review that, and then you are then onboarded to our platform. Where we're pretty unique is that we have multi-user privileges. So what that means is that an entity is not a monolithic entity. I may not, as a principal of a trading firm, want my most junior trader to be able to, one, trade up to a certain amount, but two, be able to withdraw assets. And when you don't have multi-users, which is the way that it currently works on most exchanges, you're not able to have those controls. And so once you've been onboarded to our platform, or whilst you're waiting to be fully certified onto the platform, you can create these different desks and then traders below that and create different privileges across that. Then the final step is obviously the technical onboarding piece. And again, we are blending the world of more typical finance with more typical crypto world. And so we offer both fixed connectivity as well as web API connectivity, as well as a GUI. And so then groups come on board and write to us. And so the process is relatively seamless, can take less than a day to get up and running.
What products are you guys currently offering?
Yes, right now we're offering USD BTC, and we're going to be introducing Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and ETH by the end of this month. And then in February, which is completely new for the digital asset space, is on one platform. We're also going to be offering Japanese yen and euro. So you'll be able to come onto our platform and be able to trade multiple different fiat and digital asset pairs. And that is the only exchange right now in the US where you can come on and actually trade multiple different fiat versus digital assets.
So something I'm curious about is where the growth comes from, right? Because we saw how many people were trading it in the last 12 to 24 months. And I'm hearing about you starting your exchange with SeedCX. We already mentioned ErisXX, and I'm sure, or ErisX, and I'm sure there's other ones out there that I'm not naming that are coming live soon. Are you worried about liquidity, and where do you see that growth coming from here on out?
Yeah, so obviously there's two parts to any question about kind of liquidity and growth. One is the pie that exists today and the share that we can capture. The second question really is, can that pie grow, or will this pie grow? So maybe touching on the first point, which is market share capture. So our best salespeople are other exchanges. For us, when we talk to clients, we say, where do you trade? And then very often they quickly talk about what they don't like about trading on those platforms. The fact that these platforms trade against them versus Seed, where we do not trade against our clients. We do not have a principal trading desk, which is very unique in the digital asset space. We also actually ban all employees from trading digital assets. So we are completely impartial. We then talk about connectivity. Hey, how do you connect? And then we talk to a sophisticated firm and they say, well, we use this web API thing, but really we want to use Fix because we can deploy a lot more strategies. And we say, hey, we actually have proper Fix. We're not just putting a Fix gateway on top of a REST API, which is what a lot of exchanges have done. They then talk, hey, we actually want USD. We want fiat. And so we do that. We then talk about reliable technology. They don't want to trade on a platform that goes down for 2 days. We can do that. So all of these different pieces are allowing us to capture market share from other exchanges. And partly because of our strength of our technology, groups are willing to put bigger sizes on because they're willing to put bigger risk. Because any trader knows the worst thing that can happen to you is the platform goes down and you do not know where your positions are. And that is a frequent occurrence in the digital asset space. Groups boast about having 99% uptime. In finance, you need 99.9999% uptime. And so that's how we're able to capture market share. And we think by the end of February that we'll actually have one of the best and most efficient places to execute digital assets in terms of slippage and fees, i.e. the total cost of execution. And that's ignoring just the better technology, the better compliance, the better controls that you have. The second piece of that is about whether this space is growing. And obviously there's been a price depression that has occurred over the last 12 months. And when we think about that, it's been good in many ways for our business, because what it's led to is that there's no longer these kind of low-hanging fruits of low-hanging arbitrage opportunities, these easy opportunities that exist. And when easy opportunities exist, high returns exist, you're more willing to take operational risk. Whereas as these returns have normalized, your willingness to take operational risk has decreased. And so that's where groups like us have, in a sense, actually had more resonance with our message about reducing operational risk. Look, I don't know where the price of Bitcoin and other assets are going to go. What I do know is that I'm bullish on the overall asset class space and the growth of it all. Whether it be Bitcoin, ETH, or whatever else, time will tell. And our goal as a company is to be flexible and to be impartial and to allow whatever wants to be traded to be traded. But I think there's a fundamental driver when you talk to big companies about greater tokenization. And so when we think about our business, we actually see cryptocurrencies as a wedge towards total tokenization, potentially, of a whole host of other asset classes. It won't happen overnight, but it's this wedge. And so what we're talking about here is, yes, an asset class that will potentially, and we think will grow in terms of the digital asset space, cryptocurrencies as they exist today, but also they'll grow to encapsulate other digital or other assets which are going to be tokenized and digitalized.
So what's next in this market's evolution then?
Yeah, I mean, where we see a lot of opportunity is a lot of established players who haven't been really proactive in the media. Obviously, some have, for example, Fidelity and Goldman, but you know, it's common. It's public information that, for example, groups like TP ICAP are now introducing a trading desk. And so there's a lot of growth that people just aren't talking about at the moment. And really, that's groups that we're trying to target. It's groups that have so far sat on the sidelines, bringing them into the digital asset space, but also groups that are trading and just are not willing to take the operational risk that they have previously. In terms of what's next, I think there's going to be a big consolidation in terms of the number of assets that exist in the space. There's going to be a flight to quality. I don't think you're going to have thousands and thousands of kind of cryptocurrencies. I think there will be some consolidation in terms of viability of these assets. And I think there'll be a broader tokenization of more established assets, whether that be gold, oil, or agricultural products. And so this will affect every type of asset in the world. It already is. There's already been proof of concepts by some of the biggest oil companies in the world, for example, biggest oil trading companies in the world, tokenizing oil, tokenizing other things. And this will only grow. So every contract that potentially is traded on the CME within 5 years potentially will be a tokenized form of that asset.
I did an interview the other day where Alexander Bloom actually was on here, and he said that he believes within the next, he didn't give a time, so I don't want to hold him to anything, but he said at some point, every asset will be traded using blockchain technology.
I don't think every asset will be traded in that fashion, but I do think that the nearly every, in terms of size of total assets, the majority of assets will be tokenized at some point in the future. So very roughly agree, but I would never say everything, but very nearly everything I would agree with.
You have started this exchange. You understand the landscape extremely well. What is something that traders should know before they start trading digital assets?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of, I think this is probably, people have mentioned this before, but this is probably the only platform, the only space in the asset class historically whereby operational risk exceeds market risk. And so really understanding where you're trading, making these assessments, which you don't have to do in other asset classes, really need to come to the fore. That would kind of be my kind of key piece. And secondly, look at SeedCX, because we really think we've reduced the operational risk as close to zero as possible to allow you to focus on market risk and making markets and trading and looking at data without needing the concern of, hey, will this exchange actually be around tomorrow? Will they have a 24-hour outage or whatever else? Or will they be hacked? Or will they have some issue with their banking partner? Or will their gateways go down? And so our goal is to reduce operational risk. And I think that's really a newer concept for most traders, is this understanding or conceptualization of operational risk, which you don't need in other more sophisticated asset classes.
How much demand have you had from institutional clients before you had this idea to start SeedCX, or did you start it and then to see if there was going to be demand?
I think we were bullish on the digital asset space, right? But when you're doing anything new, it's this kind of paradox between complete confidence, but also being completely being very needing to be very confident, but also needing to be always questioning of what you're doing. And so, look, we saw some of the key pillars, and we were bullish on some of the pieces that were needed for this to be successful. Could we call it the exact timing? No. Did we see that this had the potential to be what we termed a seed asset, which was just kind of flourishing when we entered, just getting started. And now kind of attitudes have completely shifted. Now, the types of groups trading in this space have completely changed. The demands have completely changed. And so there was a positional play. No one can say that they can ever get the timing 100% right or know exactly when things are going to shift. But we felt that there was a big opportunity here. And so we wanted to get ourselves in, because if this was to become an asset, then institutional volume would dominate it like it does in every other asset class.
So many things I've read over the past year or two on this space is the demand for people looking to get the institutions involved, because that was going to really set the tone. And there was a lack of institutional involvement to really get this thing up and going. And now hearing from you, it sounds to me like there is demand. And with SeedCX, you're providing the infrastructure for institutions to get on board.
Exactly. And in a way, we're successful, right, when traders come onto us and trading crypto is no longer sexy, right? There's no longer this fear factor. And that's really what we're trying to do. I mean, we think that the potential of digital assets by itself are incredibly attractive. But the conversations that people have around trade and this kind of fear factor, these kind of conversations that dominate, which is just around the exchange piece or the match and execution piece, we think we can help really just bring that operational risk down, and so that people can focus on doing what they need to do, which is trade and make money and not worry about these other pieces.
Great stuff, Edward. But we're not done yet. I have some rapid fire questions if you're ready for those.
I hope so.
All right, everybody. Our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Trading Technologies. Access the global markets from virtually anywhere with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. And now you can trade cryptocurrency spot and derivative markets side by side. For more information, please visit tradingtechnologies.com. Edward, first question for you. Who has influenced your life the most and why?
Yeah, I would probably say, my parents, they did very well in their respective careers. But I have this abiding memory when I was 10 years old, and they kind of sat me down and they said, look, here's our will. Look, you've had all the privilege that you can be afforded in life. If you ever have a problem, we're here for you. But you see that all of our money is going to go to charity, and you can have an input of where that goes. But you need to make your own way in life. And it's all about work ethic. And, that really stuck by me to go out and go get it. And, I was very, very fortunate because I always knew I had a safety net there, so I could be more adventurous. But it was all said, you need to go and chart your own path in life, which I started to do.
Ah, man, I love that story. What was one of the hardest things for you to overcome starting a digital asset exchange?
Yeah, I mean, starting any business, right? Whether that be starting a restaurant, starting a bar, starting any business is challenging, right? You really got to create a lot of momentum. And where I think we've done a great job, which was one of the challenges, which was finding people aside from just the founding team who would provide that momentum, finding people who drive things forward and create their own momentum itself. And, I'm very proud to say that, we built a team of 50 people who can do that. But that's the most challenging piece. I mean, I spent close to 80-90% of my time when we started the business recruiting. People literally are the business. And finding good people, especially in kind of a very competitive market that it is right now, is tough.
What is one attribute that you believe every trader should have?
I suppose it's kind of balancing the emotional and the intellectual, right? And it's much easier said than done. And when I traded, I wasn't a particularly good trader, and I think that was partly because of this kind of difficulty controlling the emotions, either on the real highs or the real lows, and just sticking to your intellectual piece. So I really think it's that kind of compartmentalization. I think that's probably what the traders that I know are very good at compartmentalizing, because also not taking it home and not letting it affect every piece of your life. I mean, markets now very often are 24 hours a day. Can you have a life if you're a trader? So it's really this compartmentalization, I think, which makes really the best traders, the happiest traders that I know.
What's your favorite book about digital assets?
So right now, there's a new book out called Mastering Ethereum, Building Smart Contracts and dApps. And I'm going to hash the name up, but it's by a guy called Andreas Antonopoulos. I'm actually got that quite right. And it's just a really good, it's reasonably technical, but it's a really good way to start to dive a little bit deeper into the space.
What's your favorite movie about trading?
Maybe it's a little cliche, but I really like The Big Short. Partly because it's so, it's very counter. It's about going against the established viewpoint.
I watched it again last night. Love that movie.
Oh, really?
I did.
Yeah. It really is good then.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice that you've received about trading or markets?
I suppose from my side, the closest experience I have is really on the regulatory piece, right? The best piece of advice I got was, look, all the rules change. Everything in trading constantly is changing. So the way to be the best, it doesn't matter. There's obviously a value to experience, but if you are really, really hungry, a lot of the existing paradigms have changed. So be aggressive in learning, and you can become a subject matter expert very, very quickly in certain pieces.
If you could go back in time and give the younger you a piece of advice, what would it be?
Probably have a little bit, have a little bit more fun at college.
Last question for today, Edward. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
I love going for a run along the lake when it's not too cold. But my definition of too cold is starting to change. Definitely when I first came here, I would call it quits a lot of the time, but I've definitely toughened up after a few years living here.
Oh yeah, when it's 45 or 50 degrees in Chicago, people are wearing t-shirts already.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just went for lunch with a colleague, and he literally was wearing a t-shirt. And I was like, wow. And he was like, well, I've lived for 25 years. We'll get to you one day.
Edward, where can people find you guys on social media, preferably Twitter, and give us a website to check out, please?
Yeah, so it's just SeedCX. That's our handle on Twitter. And then our email is contact@seedcx.com. And the website is just www.seedcx.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well, Edward Woodford.
Edward, I had a great time today speaking with you. Thank you so much for the insight. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming on Futures Radio Show.
No, thanks for having me. Had a really good time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for myself or my guests, please visit futuresradioshow.com and sign up to be a premium member for free. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes.